I'm actually going to switch the order of my slides. I have so many, it's hard to shuffle, but two, limiting this to the 7 to 10 minutes I've been given. I've been with the Hospital Association for 6 years, and every day I have an aha moment. And to give you an idea of what's coming, Bruce Cutright down here, he's one of our leading HR vice presidents of any of our hospitals across the state, hopefully will validate or verify what I have to say. But every year we survey our hospitals about expected employment needs. We're on a running 10-year average. We look a few years back to see how our numbers accurately reflect what was predicted, as well as looking a few years into the future. The numbers that I have up there, the baseline would be 2008, looking at what sort of some of the careers that we have needs for in the healthcare industry. Part of this is because of the aging baby boomer phenomenon, as more of us find our way into that aspect of our life. But also when baby boomers need more health care, there's lots of baby boomer providers that are also retiring. We've seen the numbers and the demand go down for our workforce shortage a little bit because of the recession. But I just want to give you a snapshot of some of the higher profile positions that we have and the demands that we anticipate for the healthcare industry. Now, not all of these will be in hospitals per se. This could be in physicians' clinics, but doing this study and working with our physician partners and other healthcare providers across the state, this is our best estimate as of today what some of those numbers look like. And as you can see, just those categories right there add up to well over 6,000 jobs, maybe 7,000 or 8,000 jobs that we're looking to fill between now and 2018. One caveat, not all of them need a 4-year degree. We have lots of jobs that pay above average salaries that do not need 4-year degrees. In fact, we have a lot of areas in our hospitals where we will help you get that education if you come to us with a high school diploma. Sometimes it takes a 1-year associate's degree or certificate along those lines. Here's one for you, and we've had great partnership with the Department of Education in getting this information out. And these aren't just numbers that we put up or tight job descriptions that vary between hospitals. We have over 350 different job classifications in our hospitals across the state. We represent 90 hospitals, and those aren't Mary Lanning defines it one way and St. Francis defines it another way. It's like they're generally accepted categories. But we have over 350 different job classifications. We need IT people, and I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit. Sometimes when I give this presentation to those that are potentially in the workforce, whether high school students or college students, I say, even if the sight of blood makes you sick, we have careers for you in healthcare. I mean, we have engineering, we have IT, we have real estate issues, we have environmental issues. I haven't even talked about providing the healthcare yet. I mean, it's so far across the gambit of what sort of jobs are out there. So accounting, finance, I mean, there are just so many things in our complicated industry that we can practically find. If you're qualified, we can help find you a place, or if you're almost there with your qualifications, many of our hospitals will make that investment. To give you an idea, one of our hospitals out in central Nebraska just paid off $70,000 of 2 people's student loans to get them to locate at that critical access hospital. That's how sometimes, I don't want to say generous we are, but how, what should I say? How badly we need them. You know, how desperate we are. I didn't want to say desperate, but it's like,
go ahead and say it, Bruce.
Yeah, I was looking for that going, what word? No. So the long and the short of it is, and we could give you numbers on so many different job openings or career opportunities. A lot of our folks are finding us as the ticket out. You know, one thing that that's been very humbling in my evaluation or research as we're implementing healthcare reform is when we're talking about Medicaid expansion. I'm just going to say this, I don't want to go down the Medicaid path here, but the numbers that have come forward with this as far as where Nebraskans live in a socioeconomic status. 1 in every 4.8 Nebraskans lives at less than 133% of the federal poverty level. 1 in every 5 Nebraskans in a family of 3 that makes less than $25,000, they're in that situation. So there are tremendous opportunities to help those people help themselves, and a lot of them want these careers. And my compliments to the community colleges. Have always had a fantastic working relationship with all of them. They're nimble. This isn't anything against the four-year institutions, but the community colleges have been so nimble and flexible in helping our hospitals meet these ever-growing demands. Plus, some of these today, we don't even know that some of these positions will exist in 5 years. I mean, I'd say they're going away. We don't know what will exist in 5 years from now, the way technology is advancing. Now, backwards in my slides, there we go, forecast. Anecdotally, I don't have any definitive measuring mechanism that says when individuals come to our hospitals as employees, are they ready to work? But there are many areas where our HR departments and the leadership in the hospitals have identified where we could be much stronger. And you're going to see a general theme throughout this, and it's all about IT. Information technology, health information technology. On the last slide, I said we need nurses. We need 5,000 or 6,000 nurses over the next 5 or 6 years. But these nurses, in addition to being able to provide care, have to have these skills. And these are some of the things that they're coming to the table with where we don't have them. If we are going to remove or reduce as much excess cost or inefficiencies within the healthcare system as we can, we need people at all levels within our hospitals to be able to do these things, whether it is reduce waste, improve analytics. That's probably one where I hear the most, is which people are coming to us with the greatest degree of ability to make cost-benefit analysis decisions. And they need to be able to do that within the hospital, working with other hospitals. It's like, do we make this investment in meaningful use or HIT or EMRs? Or do we go a different path rather than just trying to do it and hoping it sticks? And sometimes we're mandated to do it by the federal government, but even with the mandates, we want people who have those skills in whatever level they're employed in the hospital to be able to help make informed decisions. The midpoint in that list of criteria or the forecast of what we're looking for, I have a word in there that causes some people a little bit of angst when I talk about industrialization of healthcare. That isn't to make it assembly line healthcare or anything like that, but what it is to make lean-based decisions that help us utilize our resources to the greatest degree possible. Of the 90 hospitals we represent, our net patient revenues are about $5 billion per year. About half of that we pay in salaries. So how do we utilize our human capital to the greatest degree possible, as well as our machinery, our MRIs, our CAT scans? The industrialization is using those concepts to make healthcare more efficient throughout the process, but yet at the same time, you're not going to see our hospitals leave the area or the premise about being consumer friendly, the bedside manner, working on quality scores. So it's a balance, but the industrialization is not intended to be something cold and heartless in the way we change and deliver care. So I probably spoke 6 or 7 minutes. That's a few of our perspectives for now. I turn it over, or? Okay.
We'll ask Mike Flint to come up and give continuing with the business and industry perspective, to share some just general reactions and thoughts from his perspective.
So we're going to speak from the table because it appears the mics may work better. I don't know if I'm quite as distinguished as the gentleman around me. I feel a little young.
What are you patting my back for, huh? Thanks, Mike.
Had to break the ice a little bit.
Yeah, remember, I'm the last to speak.
No problem. So I'm originally from Arlen, Nebraska, not too far away from Broken Bow. Grew up in rural Nebraska. My educational background, I went to a couple years of college and said, man, I'm in debt. What do I do? Started with BD, and from there I'm basically a non-traditional student. Worked my way through from a manufacturing operator to the plant manager. So that's a little bit about me. So who is BD? BD is the world's leading medical technology company. As long as Bruce keeps using our products, we're good to go. We have 29,000 associates worldwide and in 50 different countries. In the state, our impact, we got about 2,300 associates in the state, 4 major facilities, 1 in Broken Bow, Holdridge, Nebraska, and 2 in Columbus. So we're out west. That's who BD is. Far as people, Corey asked me to speak around people and challenges. I will say one thing for our people in the state of Nebraska. We bring a lot of people in. We have a lot of manufacturing sites outside of the state and outside of the country. Everybody that comes here says, wow, how do you get people to do what they do in Nebraska? So we are doing the right things. We are Nebraskans, and we do know how to work and work hard. So that is a great thing from a people perspective. So key challenges that we face from an industry standpoint, looking at different levels of jobs. So our high schoolers that come out, one of the things that's a gap for us, and we do a lot of teaching and coaching, is around the competitiveness of the world environment. We do a lot of automation. We don't eliminate jobs and send people out, but we automate. It's lean. How do you manage cost, quality, and production? You do that through automation. So one of our gaps is truly that, educating our workforce that says we have to do this to remain a competitive environment. We are a net exporter out of the state because we supply the world. So from a high school perspective, it's that piece, educating our community around that. The other thing from a high school perspective is beyond. It's not just the jobs anymore that I can come in and I can inspect and I can do this, that, the other. A lot of the jobs are interface. The IT piece is huge. Machines are so automated that interaction from the general operator just has to be more. From a technical standpoint, 2-year degrees, totally agree. These folks are the hardest to find, the hardest to hire, and they are making a lot more than some of our 4-year degree people. Our biggest challenge that we face through all our sites, as well as I think industry does, is that mechanical electrical piece from a job perspective. Those folks, I think your college down the road at Milford, we would hire every one of them that come out of there. And so does every other state. So we need to do more of that benchmarking from a college system and says, who's best in class in a community college, who's best in class, and share those things. You know, in high school, they may have called it cheating or whatever, right? In business, we call it, you go benchmark and figure out what you need to do to improve. That's what we need to do in colleges. Let's go benchmark and figure out who does what best, share, and drop some of the barriers that we have in that system. From a 4-year perspective, some of the things that we struggle with is probably recruitment. We recruit from everywhere. We pull a lot of people in from outside the state. It feels like our kids that graduate from college want to get away for some reason. We get them back. We hire a lot of people that have been to New York, been to Florida, been there. They have kids now, and they want to come back to where Nebraska is home. So we hire a lot of those people back, but we struggle to hire the person out of college in Nebraska because it seems like they want to go away. Things that we have done to try to narrow that gap, we worked right alongside Mid-Plains. The city of Broken Bow built a college. The business has raised $1.9 million, built a building, and got Mid-Plains to come to town because we know that education is key for us. So that's private funds that businesses said, here's $50,000, here's $50,000. We did all that in a couple months.
Yeah, not very long, 90 days.
Not very long at all to build that building. The other things that we try to do to close that gap, we're constantly pulling our sophomores out of school and saying, come, tour the facility, we go talk to them as well. We have to continue to do that and do it better. One of our Columbus facilities partners with UNL. They've actually pulled a professor and said, can you come help us solve a problem? So I think you got to do more of that. That way that professor, that teacher understands what's out there in manufacturing, can align those skill sets and align those passions of our kids with what they want to grow up to be. So totally agree with your report, and I'm excited to be a part of it. Thank you.
We'll ask Dr. Chips to share with us some thoughts, and as we transition from the business and industry representatives to the education representatives of both post-secondary and secondary. So Dr. Chips.
Thank you, Corey. You can hear me all right in the back, right? Oh, very good. When Rich Cott asked me to do this, I'm still trying to figure out why. But he must know a little bit more about me, or maybe my colleagues out there, my community college colleagues, are a little more worried than I think. Prior to opening the session for conversation, we offer some tidbits from this table for your consideration. And Corey, as being our youthful moderator, a word that I use more and more, indicated that the solutions are found within this room. And as I look about, I know many of you. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't raise your hand if you knew me. But the issue is that I wondered why he said that. Okay. Second, my mother indicated the need for me to read Prosperity because she wanted to know when I'm moving out of the house. And third, I prepared to present the State of the College address the other day to Northeast Community College, my new college. And as a president, I think I have a lot to share with little time, and they think just the opposite. So that tells you how old I am. You know, seriously, we need to take the mystery out of the complex issue of the continuous, what we call swirl. That's kind of one of the catch terms of matching training needs with workforce skills. And I really believe that's a huge issue. You hit it right on the money. And not that I really appreciate what you said about community colleges. Greg, Dr. Smith, the president of Central, turned to me and says, have we paid that gentleman to come to this conference? Which I hope we have not, because I think you said that using facts rather than feelings, right? Is that correct? Okay. While life is not a bowl of cherries, it is filled with stories. And I'm more of a storyteller. I was with kind of a Boy Scout organization for a number of years, and I love to tell stories. And so I look across this audience, might suggest that those stories might have a little bit of dust on you. But so I will attempt to weave them into my conversation about this topic. First, a well-trained workforce is a global issue. And last night when we were at the MHEC meeting, the dinner, that came up. And actually it was a preparatory phase to what we were talking about today, because we're all talking about the same things around different tables. And it is a global issue. A lot of times we feel it's a local issue. We sit here as Nebraskans, most of us being Nebraskans, and talk about it being a local issue or a Nebraska issue. On the AACC board of where I sit for the American Association of Community Colleges, we're always talking about workforce shortage skills. Greg works in that arena as well. So we talk about it there, but I can here to tell you, being with 38 countries not too long ago, there are two major issues. And I think we know both of them. They're quite common. One of them is called financial woes, and that is a global issue, as we well know. Bill talked about a little bit here with his conversation about Greece and other countries that are just about ready to go broke. But the common issue is workforce issues, a shortage globally, as well as financial problems that the world is really continuing to have. I was at Mid-Plains for, actually, a little history about myself. I was at Central Community College for 23 years, and at Mid-Plains as the president for 10 years, and now the president of Northeast Community College up headquartered in Norfolk. And so at Mid-Plains and Northeast, we elected to understand more about what our students need and to really do the leadership piece. And a lot of times we talk about leadership, we go to leadership seminars, but I'm here to tell you that leadership is not found in many places, because true leadership is found with the courage to do the things that you really need to do or that we need to do in spite of what the culture is saying over here. And we talk about community colleges. Bill hit it on the money. The issue is that not that I value our four-year senior college and university partners, and they do a wonderful job. I'm not even questioning the quality of that piece. But when it comes to changing the economy of our workforce and being able to get a skilled workforce that's got more than a high school diploma, the community college is the place. And I love this place largely because I'm a Grand Island kid, and like I told Carol earlier, is that it really means a lot for me to make Nebraskans successful and people like Kevin successful as a student. Many of you have read the Friedman books, and I know you get tired of those types of conversations, but the fact is that it really is about global. So when you look at Northeast and Mid-Plains, for years, and let's be real honest about this, for years, senior colleges and universities, it was reserved for them to really get the global picture down, whether they brought in international students or they sent out students on internships or whatever they did to travel the world. And what we did is that we said, no, it's for everybody. And you can still do that on a scant budget, but the issue is at Mid-Plains, we put together a relationship with North Lindsay College in England to be able to send only applied type students. That was the criteria. And so the principal at North Lindsay agreed with me on that prospect. And so what we did is put together an exchange of applied students and their faculty. And so we sent automotive students, auto body students, graphic design students, and the list goes on and on. Child care, you just keep it up. And the issue is they went over for 9 days. And what I wanted to do, which I didn't quite accomplish before I left, was the ability to inculcate that into the curriculum and really to get believers out of everyone, because a lot of people will give that lip service even at that level, but why shouldn't it be for everyone when we truly believe that the world is getting flatter and that we need to build workplace skills, but we also need to get it on the competitive plane for our students. We talk about it a lot, but do we believe it is the question? And only you can answer that in your own heart. Second, that's the first issue about global. Secondly, is the issue is that it is systemic. Our endless Band-Aid approaches to changing the workforce landscape are not effective. And I think we need to be courageous as leaders to be able to, which I think Bill really set the stage today, especially in the long haul. I think short term it works, but long haul it doesn't. We need to start well before the students enter college. I think a lot of us give lip service to that. It's a simple truth. If we're to build a house on sand, it won't stand the test of time. The high tide will carry it away. So example is a work of the University of Nebraska on the EduCare project, which we talked about last night with the Above It Foundation, to be able to work with the early childhood issues, because we're going to have to start at the systemic piece. And I think all of us understand that the reason we can't seem to address this because it's too complex. It's very complex. You know, Vern, I think at U.S. South Sioux City, what you're trying to do with a heavy Hispanic population, you know, and trying to make them successful, it just, a lot of you folks are creating miracles out there. Unfortunately, we're doing it in a partition sort of way. And we talked at our table about it being a transitional process of figuring out how to make it seamless, and you've heard all this before. But the EduCare project is one of them. The Avenue Scholars Project, how many of you know about that? The work of Ken Bird down in Omaha. That, you know, you look at, had their staff out at Northeast the other day, and they talked to us about 160 or so success stories. And again, it's about stories, you know, weaving stories about people of hope. You know, you look at, and we talked about it at the MEC meeting last night. Gallup, Gallup organization put together kind of a hope index indicator, and what it really does in layperson's terms, the way I understand it, is 10 questions that basically tell us whether a student, whether they drop out of school or not. It's kind of not immaterial, by the way, but let's test those students with this hope index and see whether or not they've got the persona, the ability to bounce back. You know, you think in the old days with the clown that they bought you as a kid and you'd hit it and it'd bounce back off the floor. It's the same thing with these kids. Is the fact of the Avenue Scholars Project is very, very successful based on some simple principles. But to find students that really are going to bounce back, and they're finding that those students are quite successful through Metro Community College in particular. So another one, you know, you look at, it's systemic. You look at what Mike just said about the issue of the Broken Bow Extended Campus Facility. Get up on Mid-Plains Web and take a look at it, because it's, I told Mike this morning, that, the governor said, that is the model for not only Nebraska, but for the nation. If you take a look at that extended campus, basically you got, number one, the connections and partnerships with leaders, business leaders like Mike, and a bunch of people that said, we were going to make a difference in Broken Bow, Nebraska. We filled out the center court as far as all the grocery stores and the women's apparel and all that. They filled up those stores. But the next approach was to create a regional reach for Broken Bow, Nebraska, which included the work of the community college. So the work, as you all know, between employers and between education, government, and business is critical. So partnerships, of which community colleges do very well, thank you, they really do, in knowing how to do partnerships. The next thing was the Center for Enterprise, of which we developed, and I think most of you, maybe many of you have heard of it, but what it was a kind of a new concept, not continuing education. It was designed basically for entrepreneurs, but beyond that. The Union Pacific Railroad was a pillar in that place. The issue of customized training and the issues of globalization, the issues of wellness. Some of those we didn't get to take off total, but they were gutsy type leadership pillars to be able to take it forward. And I'm going to do a replication of that at Northeast, because if you know Northeast and the Norfolk area, there's a lot of business and industry there, and we can go ahead and energize that, and we need to energize it in the world of economic development in Northeast Nebraska. But also, it then, what happens is when you start partnering with people, which you all know, it takes off and blossoms much beyond what you ever imagined. It's almost like miracles in the making, because then all of a sudden the AOS degree became a part of that, the Associate of Occupational Studies, of which that was reached out to 19,000 Union Pacific employees in 23 states, of which, just think of that, if you could gain 5% of that in enrollments for the state and beyond, it's just amazing what that little piece could do right there. All the last stories I'll tell, and then I'm through. And unless, it's wonderful about community colleges in the communities, because basically you're sitting at tables and things happen. And that's the beauty of being engaged in the communities, is the fact of that when you're sitting there, things happen. We were at the work ethic camp in McCook. Most of you know that. You have a lot of inmates that are sitting there, learners, which I call them, but basically they're ready to go out into the world of work if they sit there for 180 days. Well, basically what we said was, why are you sitting here? You know, why aren't you building work skills? I know this is simple stuff, but nobody seems to ask the question. So McCook Public Schools, Velmont Industries, the corrections folks, Senator Adams was involved in LB 510 to help fund those students. And so they eventually, we had an entrepreneur that had an abandoned grocery store of 9,000 square feet. We put in, according to the inspectors that came in to look at the facility, the finest welding shop in the state of Nebraska. Now, community colleges have some excellent ones, but they said for the size, it was amazing. But what it was designed to do is to take those inmates, run them through 7 credits, 9 weeks, and go to work on an internship, apprenticeship with Belmont. Because why? Because Bill talked about they need welders. You know, and so it benefits all concerned. McCook Public Schools brought their welding students out in the morning. In the afternoon, I think it was, the folks came out of the work ethic camp. Now, what happened, what spawned from that, is a lot of females didn't want to become Rosie the Riveter. So what we did is develop the business program for anybody, but especially the women. So we had over 100 students go through the welding so far. We had about 50 students go through the business piece. So why? It makes common sense. Once they leave, what? They can either go back to the street and the recidivism goes up, or they can actually then have some skills to offer someone. And so, you know, it's just all about partnerships. And I know you get tired of hearing about that, but it has to do with what's happening today in these round tables, is getting together and figuring this out together. It's very complex, but I'll tell you what, it can be done, and community colleges are going to be one of those features that leads the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Joel?
Yes, well, thank you very much. And, you know, I think it's time to move, and it's time to get serious about this, and we intend to do that in Lincoln. So with that out of the way, let me tell you what's driving our conversations in Lincoln Public Schools. First of all, from a personal level, I had a teammate in Grand Island who took advantage of an advanced welding class at Central Community College. He was a first-generation immigrant, young man who I'm really quite proud of, who received a full scholarship to the University of Nebraska, and it was part of their program for first-generation immigrants. And he was he is a very intelligent young man. And I really wanted him to do that. I felt like, boy, to have a tuition paid and expenses paid and a counselor at your disposal, here's an opportunity for you to really make your family proud. And I guided him to the best of my ability to the University of Nebraska. And he went, and he lasted 3 semesters because college wasn't for him. And he's back in Grand Island now. I think he's enrolled at Central Community College. and he's in his 3rd or 4th year as a welder with Standard Iron, and he's beginning to see some promotions, and he's doing very, very well for himself, and he's happy, and I'm happy. I was quite relieved when he told me he was going back to Grand Island. Since I've been in Lincoln, set my 2nd year, going on 3, I've been approached by a large number of business and industry folks, individually and collectively. I serve on the chamber board, and this has come up intermittently, really about what the discussion is here today, that there are great jobs in Lincoln, there are careers that we're just now beginning to envision, and what are we doing? What can we do to partner to provide opportunities for those kids? And I think of one individual just in the last couple of months who's a self-made, very, very successful entrepreneur, owns several businesses in the community, graduate of one of our Lincoln high schools about 2 decades ago, who tells the story of how everybody guided him to college, which is where he wanted to go, thought he wanted to go, only to find out that it wasn't for him. There wasn't anything at that level that was really playing to his interests, and he was able to successfully navigate the system. He didn't last long in college, but he was able to acquire skills, and he's a very successful business person today. I tell you those stories because I think that's what we're talking about. We're talking about students, that young people who have capacity and ability and skills to be successful, but because our systems are so traditional in how we prepare and deliver, we don't have that flexibility to provide opportunities for them. Lincoln Public Schools, almost 37,000 students, 43% of our students are in poverty as measured by free and reduced. We have shop classes, vocational opportunities at every one of our schools. We have 2 high schools with more than 2,000, right at 2,000 students. We're growing dramatically, and we have a high college going rate. We are, by all measures, a college prep school district. So, and we're very successful. You look at our ACT scores, they're high. You look at our on-time graduation completion rate, it's high. But then I look at a statistic in terms of what is the college completion rate, and I see that that's not very high. And because we send so many students to college, I have to believe there's a lot of Lincoln students that are going to college and recognizing that that's not for them, but that's how we trained and prepared them. And so what are they doing now? Well, with that in mind, and conversations with Wendy Birdsell of our chamber, and coming off an experience in Grand Island with Cindy Johnson and now Superintendent Rob Winter, where they're going to be rolling out a concept probably in the next year or so, and having some ideas in mind, approached Jack Huck at Southeast Community College, and everything that Mike said, and Mike said about flexibility is absolutely true. Because from day one, as we were thinking about and under some pressure to build a 7th high school in Lincoln, because 2,000 is that round number where people say we're too big, it's time for another one. And Lincoln has a very successful track record of adding additional infrastructure when needed. We wondered, was there another way to perhaps get at serving kids, not only from an infrastructure standpoint, but also from a standpoint of skill acquisition, ultimately leading to something purposeful. And Jack came to the table very open, very interested, and we are about 6 months into a very engaged planning process. And what we envision is what I guess I'll just tell you what I envision, because quite frankly, we've got a team of about 15 people right now, Jack's folks, our folks, that are visiting some national models where what Bill put up on the screen today, or some of the considerations that we've had. We've had some conversations with folks. But what I envision is a standalone facility, a career high school academy, centered on clusters that would represent the jobs of today and tomorrow, with heavy business and industry buy-in, more than just conversation, more than just community support, but actually, as we said at our table, skin in the game. That gave us an opportunity to perhaps use staff, resources, equipment, and provide training experience for students that would be, we would hope, second to none in the area in the country, that would lead to viable internships, mentorships, and paying jobs. And we think that we have great interest in Lincoln for that right now. We know we do. We also know we have some hurdles that we have to overcome, not the least of which would be how do we acquire a facility? Where would the facility be located? What would the scheduling look like? We know we have some accreditation issues, but the commissioners assured us that won't be a problem. So, you know, we have the, maybe, he says. So we know that we have some barriers, but we also know this. If we could create this concept around 5 to 7 career clusters of today with the flexibility to adjust tomorrow based on what those jobs are going to be like, because we don't know. If we could serve 1,000 to 1,200 students, say 600 in the morning and 600 in the afternoon, we wouldn't have to build a 7th high school today, and we would be able to partner with our community and our business and industry in a way that we think that would help Lincoln and the state of Nebraska and certainly the students that we're representing. So a couple of the hurdles that we have is how do we schedule that? I mentioned certification. And then transportation. What we've learned, we have 4 focus programs in Lincoln. They're all very, very good, and they do a wonderful job of providing experiences for students. But what happens is they're underutilized. And they're underutilized because we haven't provided transportation. So transportation is going to be key. We're a city that's continuing to grow on the perimeter, and we know that some students have difficulty getting there. So our Board of Education at our annual retreat created a strategic priority. This is one of 5, and they've asked that we have a recommendation probably right after the first of the year on how to go forward with this. I appreciate very much Jack's willingness to move this on the fast track, and we intend to meet it. We don't really know what it looks like today, but I think in the next 30 days when our teams get back from these visits, and we've had an opportunity to immerse ourselves in the literature, that we'll begin to form a model that will make sense for us and for Lincoln. Right now, it's been internally driven with support from, again, our chamber, but the next step is to put a couple of advisory groups together representing business and industry in terms of how they can help us really craft this final solution. We intend to open it up to area school districts because we don't see this as a Lincoln-only issue. We see this as far-reaching as we can make it, because we know that some of the smaller schools really struggle with how do they prepare or provide career opportunities for children. So we're really excited about it. 3 things that I think I'll leave you with. One is that we're hoping that there'll be some state support somewhere down the road with respect to this whole CTE movement. 2, I mentioned skin in the game from the industry standpoint. We haven't defined that yet, but there has to be more than just you have enough resources, we pay enough taxes. There has to be come to the table with some ability to move this thing along. And then from an internal perspective, we have to have a culture change. We are a college prep institution. Our counselors advise our kids accordingly. I think it was said this morning that we're trained in helping students look for colleges that match up with their interests. What we're not really trained in is what are those opportunities that our own community offers students that, quite frankly, could pave the way to, as an email that I received from an electrician in town, very, very similar story right after we announced that we were moving along this. And he told me what he was making, and he told me what his age was. And he said, why did they make me go to college for 1.5 years before I figured it out? We have those opportunities for our kids. In this standalone center, we, with our partnership with Southeast Community College, we believe that students will come out with 1 year of college credit, so we're not moving away from the importance of a college going rate. We just want those college credits to have meaning for kids, connect them to their learning, so that becomes a springboard and an inspiration for their personal success.
Thank you. Before we open it up for questions, we do have an opportunity. We'd like to ask Senator Greg Adams if he would come forward. I wasn't quite sure if it would work into his schedule, but we're fortunate he's able to be here with us just a little bit this morning to offer us a perspective from legislation, our state legislature as well. So I'll let Senator Adams have the mic.
Well, this is going to be very extemporaneous. I didn't expect this today, but sometimes that's maybe the best delivery form. I got about 1,000 things I want to say about this. And I'm only going to say one because that's all you want to hear and that's all you have time for. And the experts are right up here and they're out here. It's not standing here. 31 years of teaching high school seniors. There wasn't a day I didn't think about this very thing. What are we preparing them for? Where are we sending them? What are we doing this year? What are we going to do next year? Constant, constant, constant. And I don't know why, call it fate, but in the last 3 weeks, I feel like I have been drawn into meetings that have all, in one way or another, focused on this same topic. But I'll tell you the meeting that did it most for me, Commissioner Breed was there, the governor was there, 11 Metro superintendents, Metro Community College, the business community, some of them were sitting there. And I listened for 2 hours. Didn't say a thing. That's hard for a state senator. But I didn't say a thing until finally I was called upon by the governor. But what I walked away from was this. We have at least 3 silos. And you already know what I'm talking about. We've got higher education, we got the business community, and we got the K-12 community. And we give a great deal of lip service to each other. And we should, and respect along with lip service. But I came away from that meeting saying to myself, and by the way, the first thing a legislator thinks is, we need a bill. And I went into that meeting thinking exactly, all right, what could I draft to fix this? And maybe there is something out there, but I'll tell you what we need right now, in my limited opinion, then I'm going to shut up and get out of here. We need a sit-down. A real sit-down between those silos. Take no offense, but not a meeting with this many people. This is a good beginning point, though. But we need a real sit-down. And when we sit down, it's very clear to me, regardless who says what and what we talk about, there's going to be a whole lot of yeah buts, yeah buts, yeah buts. And every one of them are going to be legitimate. Every one of them. But we can't change this. We can't change the face of where we're going in education in Nebraska. We can't help the business community. K-12 can't be helped. Higher ed can't be helped. We can't do that unless we listen. Listen to those yeah buts. You don't have to agree with them. And the yeah buts need to be explanations, not excuses. There's a big difference, I think. When that happens, the people are here. We can make moves. And I always think that one of the values of Nebraska, we're small enough. We don't even buy in all the time to what those other guys are doing. I mean, we might steal a little bit from them. We can do this. But we need to have that very direct conversation. When I say direct, that was one of the things I took away from that meeting in Omaha. We're not being specific with one another. K-12 is not being specific about its issues and what it can and cannot do. Higher ed is not being specific with K-12 and the business community, and the business community is not being specific enough with the education community to say, here is what we need. And to be sensitive to each other's issues because they are somewhat unique. I think we begin with a very direct conversation long before we have any legislation. Then if somebody's got an idea for a bill, you come talk to me. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Adams. At this point, we'll have an opportunity for 15 to 20 minutes of questions with our panel. Prior to me asking questions, we'll open it up to the audience for questions that you might have specifically for our business and industry representatives or our education representatives. And if there are none from the audience, I have a list as well, so whichever we prefer. So, but we'll open it up to the audience first.
Well, you know, initially, this was credit to Rich Cott. Decade and a half ago, there was a team of folks from Nebraska that went and looked at some models. And I've always had in my mind the EBIT model, which is in Phoenix, Arizona, East Valley Industrial Technology Academy, which really had a standalone facility where students took advantage of whatever the career clusters were, and many of the Fortune 500 companies in the area had classrooms in this particular building, and I was always captivated by that. In fact, we took a Grand Island team, and we went down and looked at it several years ago, so that was one. We're interested right now in St. Joseph, Missouri has rolled out a concept, and we had a team that went down there last week, where we've got a team going to the middle, Denver College in Denver. We think is pretty current and lines up with what we're looking at. And then I'm going to be personally going down Monday with a team to Hutchinson Community College to look at what what they've put together as a package. Oklahoma, we had an Oklahoma consultant that met with our team about before summer break and talked to us about some of the options that are out there. So it really is what's the best model. And again, I gave you kind of my vision, but that's going to be subject to, what is the best practice that's going to fit our needs. Tampa, Florida was another one that people have looked at as well.
Other questions?
I have a related question, Mayor. Sure. To you.
How does that
just a
work?
Panelist to panelist. Have you ever given thought, like the English model has the technical education for those students in their colleges starting at age 16? Have you ever thought about just carte blanche moving them right to Southeast?
Well, not directly, but indirectly, we've asked ourselves the question: do we really need the senior year in high school? And could that be totally transformed to reflect what we're talking about today, as well as more vocational job training? So I've read about the European model, and Bill did a great job of capturing that in his presentation. I think there's some takeaways that we can get there, but are we as a society ready for that? We're talking about a major culture change here, and this is, as much as we want to be reformers and transformers, one of the things that we have to realize is that we're only going to go as far as our communities and our states, and what our parents will allow us to. So. Not quite ready to jump off there, but definitely willing to negotiate the senior year.
I like Jack, and he turned ashen when I said that. I want you to know that.
Other questions?
This one's for you too, Steve.
Yeah, that's good.
We're not picking on you, but you talked about culture change, and I'm wondering. I know you're early in the process, but what sort of feedback are you getting from your faculty, from your teachers about this notion?
Mixed. And I mean that, and I take that as a real positive, because I spoke with all of our CTE folks at the beginning of the school year, and I could tell at the beginning of the meeting there was a lot of nervous tension, because it really was about jobs and what does the superintendent think about the work that we're currently doing, and what part of the graduation rate don't I like? All of those kinds of things were part of their line of thinking. But I believe that as we begin to define this concept more clearly, people are going to turn around, because it really is about opportunities for kids. Who could argue that if a student is more connected to their learning, they're going to come to school more frequently, they're going to learn more, they're going to be able to apply it, and oh, by the way, ultimately, hopefully they'll land a job that's going to be productive and allow them to be productive. So, it's been mixed. I want to go on record as saying that that my personal motivation in this is not an attack on anything that we're doing in Lincoln that isn't working, but as our board has said, okay, 83% on-time graduation, really good. Why can't we be 85? What about 90? And for us to get to that, we know we can't teach harder, teach longer. What we're going to have to do is go student by student by student and connect them to some viable learning. And so that's where the hard work's going to be. So for us, as we look at this, we see this as a natural step for us to help more of our kids be successful. Now, anytime there's a change initiative, with that comes the threat of my job may change. And certainly, you know, we're getting a little bit of that. But I will tell you, Lincoln folks are very professional, and once this is clearly defined, we'll have the buy-in we need to move forward.
One question and one thing that comes up in the Pathways report is the notion of connecting work and learning. And Bruce and Mike, from your perspective, what are some ways that we can really build upon the concept of connecting the world of work to learning and providing work-based learning opportunities for students?
Well, I think that one of the best ways to do it is for that connection to be a practical connection, not just something in the way of a shadowing experience where they may come to the hospital and maybe see what goes on there or what various professionals within our facilities do. But when we engage in a more practical internship or relationship, more than likely we're going to have a higher odds of retaining those individuals and grooming them to be successful within the culture of what our hospitals are trying to establish, whether it would be with the incorporation of IT, whatever it may be. I think that in aggregate, our hospitals do a fair job, a fairly good job of helping assist with educational costs for those promising prospects. But as I have visited with the education community, especially higher education, the pushback or the where the rubber may hit the road is the capacity issue. And there's lots of discussion about do we have the capacity to produce all of the healthcare workers that we need? And that may be the chicken and the egg issue, but you know, I think that a very successful model that Dr. Chips is now the head of is what was done in Norfolk, where there was a public-private partnership. The university came forward with some of the teaching resources. The hospital community, I think, anteed up a substantial share to help build the building that's on the campus up there, knowing that we had a need. And so that there needs to be more skin in the game, as Dr. Joel said, that you know, our hospitals cannot, or other healthcare providers cannot wait for education just to solve its problem or that problem for us. We need to make those investments. And another area, and it's a little costly, but another area is actually when students are in their formal education to do their clinic or their clinical experience within our facilities. You know, we bring them in. We have to provide space as well as the time to oversee that. And those are certain things that each of our hospitals balances differently as far as where that fits in the community benefits that they provide their community, as well as where they see that as an investment in filling the slots that they're going to need to fill. But we as hospitals, probably being the largest healthcare provider segment in our state, need to put more skin in the game to help create more practical experiences, internships for high school students that may be thinking about a career in healthcare. But then also once those students enter the formal education process, that we need to, you know, carry our weight or, you know, put our skin in the game to make sure that we're not the impediment to not having enough capacity in order to educate those folks. So that's some of what I would see we would do.
Yeah, just to add, one of the things that we've done in our Plymouth, England facility was actually an extended program where students came in and had a project, right? In every industry, you have opportunities to improve. So partnered with colleges and said they need to save $100,000 on this particular project. We signed in a contract with the school as well as the student. You know, this is what they will be focused on for the next 12 months. So I think that extended view is definitely what we need to do more of. We do a lot of internships, but it gives them a flavor. I think that vesting into something that is longer term, and then that person really knows, is this what I want to go into from that perspective.
I think we have time for about one more question before we get ready for lunch. So if there's a question from the audience.
I've heard a lot of talk today about pathways to getting a better job. What are we doing to help create pathways for students to create their own businesses? And how does that integrate into this conversation?
You have to save the best till last?
You gotta pick one to talk to. Okay.
Yeah, point at somebody and
Leave
hope
it
it's
to
not
Dan
me.
to play
Huh?
Stump the Chump. Thanks, Dan. What's that? I know I can answer this.
Let's hear it, Bruce.
I'm going to give him the 3 E's. Engage, educate, and empower. And engage that individual, educate them, and then empower them so that they feel that they have all the tools and resources necessary. Now, the specific meat on those bones is that in the realm of healthcare, if you have IT people that are looking to start a niche in what we need, we have more IT demands and kind of the see a need, fill a need type perspective. I would imagine that almost every one of our hospitals with an IT department, some of our smaller ones don't have a very robust IT department, but most of them right now are looking for problem solvers, analytical entrepreneurs that come in and would contract to figure out how to solve all of the interfacing challenges that we have with whether it's coding challenges, privacy issues. There are tremendous opportunities in the healthcare arena to do some things along those lines. The individuals or the entities that figure out how to develop a matrix that ties incentives for compensation based upon the outcomes and performance rather than fee for service will hit it out of this park, because that is where we need to go in healthcare. We need to move from a fee for service delivery system to one that's based upon performance, but yet there are no systems out there that adequately measure that. Like healthcare reform or not, it is the law of the land, and there are several components in there. I mean, we have several hospitals that have attested to the federal government's requirement to have meaningful use. However, they can't communicate with another hospital. So it's like this seamless transfer of information. I know I'm just on one perspective here, but if you have folks that are interested in IT, we could give you a boatload of things that people could tackle and take this on and solve our problems, or help us solve our problems. But financial resources, there have been, some great things with Future Force and other programs that I was fortunate to be involved in my former career as Chief of Staff for Tom Osborne. We worked with education, labor, creating just making awareness of the resources out there that already exist. I think that's one of the biggest challenges. Most of the entrepreneurs in this state have no idea where to turn. And I think we've created a lot of resources, but yet we have a long way to go in helping them get them to the experts. And Greg, I could go on and on and on because I'm so passionate, but I'm going to stop.
And I would just merely add, we have an entrepreneurial focus program in Lincoln with about 60 students that are working on what you ask, and we think that we should have 150 in there. So for us, as we've had conversations, we would envision that somehow this would be integrated into that curriculum, how to be a business person, because truly, where are the next Bill Gateses and some of the more successful entrepreneurs coming from? They're coming from hopefully our schools, and we need to give them the tools to be successful.
Thank you. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. It's interesting as we continued through the morning and as we work towards the afternoon, common themes keep reoccurring. And we'll continue to build upon those this afternoon and really think about what are those realistic, tangible next steps for Nebraska, and how can we continue to address the challenges that have been presented this morning. At this point, we will break for lunch. Feel free